Do you like Diablo 4? If your answer to this question is yes, I'm afraid you're wrong. You see, I have here the definitive list as to all the reasons why you shouldn't like this game. And I don't think there's a better place to start than with the seasonal content. Seasonal content for a game like Diablo 4 is a fantastic thing. And why wouldn't it be? Having a system based around adding new content ensures that there will always be fresh things coming to Diablo 4. Unfortunately, however, Blizzard just did not get it right in any way. Now, the biggest misstep and the biggest sin they took with the seasonal content is going the pay-to-play route. Now, what I mean by this isn't the fact that you can't play the seasonal content if you don't pay money. It is free to everyone. Anyone can do the seasonal missions. However, the seasonal content is realistically mostly balanced and based around the Battle Pass, which you do have to pay to get the premium version. Without the promise of Battle Pass progression, there isn't much of a point playing the seasonal content. It's nothing that fresh, it's nothing that new, and when you have to completely start from scratch, it just turns out being more of a chore than it is new, interesting things to do. This is made especially sad when you realize that even owning the Battle Pass doesn't really incline you to play, as not only is it incredibly grindy, at least for my personal taste, I'm grinding for things I don't really care about. None of the skins really jump out to me. They're not anything special that I can't find in any other free cosmetic I can just unlock by playing the game. In the best case scenario, you are inconveniencing yourself to grind out a battle pass that means nothing. On top of all of this, when you take a step back and realize you are paying $90 to gain access to the chance to spend another, $10 on the battle pass, I would have felt like I wasn't getting my money's worth even if the season was fantastic. Now, I mentioned all this first because it adds a good bit of context to the fact that the seasonal content is also just not fun. And frankly, its biggest issue is the entire concept that it's based and built around. You see, the special aspect, the entire shtick that they were basing it around, is malignant enemies. The entire design of these enemies is basically the gameplay loop of reusing boss fights. To unlock any of the seasonal upgrades, you have to kill these enemies twice. I think it really goes without saying why building the entirety of your seasonal concept around one of video games' least liked tropes is just a pretty abysmal idea. On top of all of these missteps, the fact that right before the season released, they decided to nerf the power of every single character in the game really reinforces the idea that this season was meant to be a grind. On the topic of the Battle Pass and the fact that you buy it, another important issue you should be aware of before purchasing this game is the quality of the Digital Deluxe and the Ultimate Edition. I'm just going to tell you straight up right now, do not buy the Digital Deluxe Edition and do not buy the Ultimate Edition. For paying quite a premium extra to get these versions, you get pretty much nothing. Frankly, in buying these versions, you are basically buying an overpriced version of the Battle Pass. That's pretty much everything they have to offer you. Sure, you do get some mounts and some mount armors, which are hardly worth the extra $10 you're basically paying on them. And if you do buy the Ultimate Edition, you do get an emote, which is certainly not worth the price. While we've been on the topic of buying the Battle Pass and buying the more expensive versions of the game, I think it is only right for me to mention my absolute disdain for the in-game buyable cosmetics. Not only are they incredibly overpriced, they also go to represent Blizzard's genuine greed because there is nothing stopping them from just throwing these cosmetics in the base game. It's a quick buck for them and you're an easy target. If you really feel like wasting your money for a quick hit of dopamine, you'd have better luck in a casino. Sure, the house always wins, but at least the house doesn't hate you. Alright, wow. It only took about 6 minutes to finish talking about Blizzard's greed, so we can finally start talking about a lot more of the gameplay specifics, things that actually affect every single player, rather than ultimately optional content. And I frankly think there's no better place to start than with the fact that this game is forever online, meaning that no matter how alone you are, you could be the last person on Earth, you would need a stable internet and to connect to the game to actually be able to play it. Now, I understand for a lot of people this might not be too big of an issue, but if internet is a concern for you, it is something good to note because it might and very well does for me make the game unplayable at times. The worst part about this all is that there isn't even an explicit reason to need other people passively in your world. The only two justifications for it I can see is for the PvP zone, which in my few hours of running around in it, I have never seen a single person, and then the Legion events and world bosses, both of which are entirely optional to do. And there's also a chance that the map markers might be bugged for you, meaning you'll never even know they're going on in the first place. On the topic of multiplayer, the multiplayer enemy scaling in this game is absolutely horrendous. The balancing in single player alone feels bad enough, so when you add the complexity of another HP bar and source of damage, things start to feel strange. Bosses tend to come across as way too weak, but fight a basic enemy on your own and you'll feel about as powerful as Biden facing a flight of stairs. This next issue that I'd like to talk about is weirdly enough one of the things that bugs me most about this game, even though I would argue it's one of the least major here. And that issue being the entire way that horses are done in this game. One of the main annoyances I found with horses is the fact that you have to complete almost the entire main story to unlock them. The effect that this created, at least for myself, is that the inconvenience of having to run around to every distant story mission started to change the main campaign from an interesting storyline to work through to an annoying roadblock stopping me from reaching some more convenience. On top of this, the horse's usefulness has been severely muted in the game for reasons I don't quite understand. You are unable to use your dashes in and around town, and worst of all, you can't use them in the incredibly long backtrack-filled dungeons that this game loves to throw at you. Diablo 4's story, a major selling point for the game, is just kind of okay. It's not bad by any means, and it's not something that makes me regret buying the game. However, it can be confusing at times. At a certain point in the story, there is a lot of reused boss fights. While, mind you, playing through with my friends, boss fights at most times felt incredibly weak, and there were certainly quite a few moments that felt incredibly disconnected from what was supposed to be going on. On top of all of this, while Lilith does serve as quite a cool antagonist, they do play her around an incredibly garbage trope in which the entire story is basically building up to the fact that she is absolutely unbeatable. Every quest in the main story feels like you're trying to catch up. You are always one step behind. This is especially reinforced as generally the main times you see Lilith is in cutscenes from places she once was. Because of this, the story is built around a concept that you know will be eventually thrown out as soon as you hit the game's climax. This makes it incredibly hard to get immersed, as the entire point of the game, both Lilith and the story as a whole, is reduced to this unsatisfying inevitable. Uh-oh, looks like it's time for a potentially unpopular opinion. That being that the Paragon system sucks balls. Oh, but it adds more customization. Look at how advanced and in-depth you can make your character. Sure, that's all great, but it's such a messy and complicated way to do it that I just feel incredibly uninspired to really care. I mean, I didn't even really know that these numbers existed, nor what they did until I unlocked the Paragon system. And the points change so little number-wise that it just reinforces the feeling of grindiness and struggles to interest me in any real way. Only being allowed to have one legendary aspect at a time is such a huge missed opportunity. While the game would very much need a lot of balancing work and changes to make that possible, I think it would be a lot more fun and you'd be able to get a lot more interesting and strange builds if you were able to fully stack into being really good at one thing. Although this game includes a hardcore mode, it seems it wasn't fully designed to be played that way, as there are so many dumb ways for your character to just be outright killed. For example, being frozen, stunned, hit with the fear effect, and then those can very much combo off with things like poison or fire. Enemy death explosions, which can be hidden behind everything going on screen. You can lag out entirely, or sometimes even just being a little too laggy is enough. Too many enemies to deal with, or maybe just a single enemy that decides it's your time to die. Level differences, which sometimes show up in things like strongholds, can make fights borderline impossible, and frankly, this list could likely go on. To add on to all of this, these things alone can be very lethal to you, but when you start stacking them, it can basically mean no matter your build, it's just GG's right then and there. And finally, although they're not too bad generally, the game does contain a few glitches. Sometimes visually things mess up. There's this random man with a missing text box. A more annoying one, every now and then when I tried to dash, it would just freeze me in place. There was a chest I opened that only had 5 gold in it and nothing else. Maybe that one was intentional, I don't know. Either way, a little bit strange. But the worst of them all that genuinely affects my everyday gaming experience is the fact that the Legion events and world bosses just do not show up on my map. This is really annoying because it means I never get to participate in them because I can never find them. I did find a fix that worked for me, however, and that is having to go into the date and time settings of my computer and making sure I have set time automatically turned on. I'm pretty confident this must have something to do with the way that time is synced with Diablo and your computer, seeing as these are global events. And with all that said and done, we have talked about everything I really want to talk about. The game in general falls into issues with its pacing and its grindiness. The seasonal content is laughable and absolutely not a selling point for the game. And the game does fall into quite a few issues of feeling unbalanced and just a little bit frustrating. So does this make it a bad game? Is it deserving of the score that it currently has? In my opinion, no, not really. As much as this video may seem like I hate this game, I actually don't mind it. While it does have a lot of glaring issues, it never ruined it enough for me to want to not play. Do I recommend buying Diablo 4, however? For full price, I very much have to say no, it is not worth its market value. However, on sale, if it's a game you are interested in, go right ahead. Ultimately though, I feel there are better options, and at this current point in time, why not save $10 and buy Baldur's Gate 3? People are absolutely loving it, and I'm sure there's somewhere that $10 would rather go. Other than that, if you do have anything else that you think belongs on this list, or there is something that you think doesn't belong on this list that I put on this list, bit of a tongue twister there, leave a comment and let me and others know, as personal opinion does affect videos like this quite a bit, and I'm sure there's something I've managed to get in the process of making this video. Other than that, thank you very much for watching this frankly quite strange video. I gotta say, I did not enjoy the editing process of this one too much, but either way, I do hope you did enjoy, and I will hopefully have some maybe quicker and a little bit better content coming out soon.
Reached physical limits. Must go back and reload.